Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk a little about the future of the One Piece live action, because it looks like this series could continue for many more seasons in the years ahead, and that means the chances of seeing some very important characters in live action keep getting higher. But I have some serious concerns when it comes to Boa Hancock, because the possibility that Netflix might change the core of this character, soften her too much, or fail to fully capture the impact she has in the manga and anime is something that really worries me. In this video, we're going to talk both about the future of the One Piece live action and about my concerns over whether some major characters we'll see later on can really be handled the right way. Before the video starts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Netflix is clearly thinking about taking the One Piece live action a lot further in terms of seasons. The first season was a huge success. Expectations for the second season are very high again. And honestly, I think the third season will also be a strong success. If that momentum continues, then this won't just be a temporary adaptation anymore. It'll become a long-running IP that they seriously want to keep expanding. And that means this. In the coming years, the chances of seeing some of the most important and beloved characters from the One Piece universe in live action will keep getting higher. The character I especially want to talk about today is Boa Hancock, because Hancock is one of my favorite characters in the entire One Piece universe. To be completely honest, she might even be my favorite character after Luffy. I absolutely love the fact that she is both very funny, very sweet, and at the same time, incredibly cruel. In other words, the character has coldness, seriousness, and danger on one side, while on the other side she has these completely unhinged, funny, and adorable moments. I already love characters with that kind of duality. That's exactly why I absolutely love Boa Hancock in the anime and manga. But when it comes to the live-action side, I have some serious concerns about Hancock, because we've already seen Netflix tone down certain character traits to make them feel more adaptable. And I think the clearest example of that is Sanji. Now personally, I'm someone who finds Sanji's extreme reactions to girls funny. The way he overreacts whenever he sees them, the hearts in his eyes, constantly being in ladies first mode. That's part of his character. Yes, it's exaggerated. Yes, sometimes it's too much. But that's also part of the spirit of One Piece. But in the live action, they seriously reduced that side of Sanji. For example, even the fact that Sanji didn't turn around and look at Nami in the scene where she was wearing a bikini in Season 2 is an example of this. In the anime, something like that would be almost impossible. Sanji would cause a whole scene even if he just heard Nami was going to the pool, he'd follow her around, hearts flying everywhere. In the original story, that side of Sanji is much more visible. The live action keeps it much more controlled and in the background. Now this is my real fear. What if they do the same thing with Boa Hancock? Because what makes Boa Hancock special is not just the fact that she is beautiful, powerful, and charismatic. What makes her unforgettable is the way she turns into a completely different person whenever Luffy is involved. Normally, she's very serious, distant, cruel, and even rude to most people. She hates men, and she's not exactly someone who treats the people around her kindly either. So in the classic sense, she's not really a kind-hearted character. We love her because when it comes to Luffy, a completely different side comes out from under that icy exterior. The fact that she is ridiculously in love with Luffy, that she reaches a point where she would do anything for him, that she completely loses all seriousness whenever she sees him. That is what makes Hancock Hancock. If the live action tones that side down, then I honestly don't think we'll get the full feeling of the character. Because at that point, all we'll have left is just a strong and beautiful female character. But Boa Hancock is not only that. She is a character who can be very attractive, very terrifying, and also incredibly funny at the same time. She becomes unpredictable whenever Luffy is involved, and she's the kind of character who puts a smile on your face while you watch her. I think that balance is extremely important. If Netflix makes her too serious, she'll feel incomplete. If they soften her too much, she'll still feel incomplete. Another big concern I have is the casting. I'll be honest, finding the right actress for Boa Hancock is going to be really difficult. Because it's not enough for the actress to just be beautiful. It's not enough for her to just look serious either. She has to be incredibly striking, she has to naturally create weight the moment she appears on screen, and at the same time, in scenes with Luffy, she has to suddenly be able to give off a very sweet, funny, and even slightly childish energy. In other words, this role needs range, not just one kind of acting. If the casting is wrong for a character like Hancock, the audience may never feel that impact from the moment she first appears. What I personally want the most is for Hancock to feel like the version from the manga and anime, both physically and in terms of character energy. She should be tall, attractive, elegant, but at the same time have a threatening presence. And yes, I'll say this openly, I want Boa Hancock to be played by a white actress. I'm very clear about that. That comes entirely from my personal attachment to the character. Otherwise, in general, I'm not someone who gets hung up on race changes or appearance changes in adaptations. For many characters, I really wouldn't care at all. But when it comes to Boa Hancock, I want to see that image that exists in my mind from the manga and anime reflected in the live action too. That is completely my personal expectation. What really matters here is this. It's not enough for them to cast Hancock as just a beautiful character. This character needs arrogance, coldness, and cruelty. She needs that superior way of looking down on people. She needs that sharp edge of not liking men. In other words, I don't want them to soften her just to make her seem more likable. Because Boa Hancock is not a soft character. What makes her special is that she only shows that vulnerable and sweet side when it comes to Luffy. Toward everyone else, she is harsh, serious, and often merciless. If that balance is broken, then the core of the character is broken too. Another thing I'm very sensitive about is how the relationship between Luffy and Hancock is written. I absolutely want that relationship to stay exactly the way it is in the anime and manga. I don't want Luffy to act warmer or more romantic toward Hancock. And I don't want Hancock to be written as either less obsessed or more obsessed than she already is. I want that balance to stay exactly as it is. Because what makes that relationship fun in One Piece is precisely that dynamic. Luffy being completely outside the romantic side of it, while Hancock is living fully inside that world, is what makes their dynamic funny and special. If Netflix changes that, then it becomes a completely different relationship, and I think that would ruin the original flavor. I also need to say this. Up to now, Netflix has changed some things in the One Piece live action and handled certain points differently, but none of it has seriously bothered me. In fact, overall, I really think they've done a very successful job so far. I'm on the side that genuinely likes this adaptation, so this is not a hate video, and it's not really a complaint video either. On the contrary, I'm sharing my expectations and concerns for the possible live-action version of a character I love very much, because Boa Hancock is not an ordinary character to me. That's why I'm a little extra obsessive about this, and I fully admit that. So in the end, right now we don't have an official casting, we don't have an official look, and it's not even clear exactly when the character will show up. But if the One Piece live action manages to get that far, then I really believe that at some point, we are absolutely going to see Boa Hancock. And when that day comes, my biggest hope will be this, that they adapt Hancock exactly the way she should be, not less and not more. I want to see that iconic Hancock who is beautiful, serious, dangerous, arrogant, cruel, but completely falls apart whenever Luffy is involved. Because I think that is exactly where the magic of this character lies. I really hope Netflix brings us Boa Hancock without breaking that balance and while protecting the soul of the character. Because if they do it right, she could become one of the most unforgettable characters in the live action. But if they do it wrong, she could become one of those characters that ends up feeling incomplete in the hearts of viewers. That is exactly where all of my concern and all of my expectation come from. Yeah guys, when it comes to Boa Hancock, I'm honestly both very excited and a little worried, because if she's done right, she could become one of the most unforgettable characters in the live action. But if she's done wrong, she could lose all of that magic. Do you think Netflix can really capture Boa Hancock the way she is in the manga and anime? What kind of actress would you want to see in this role? And do you think Hancock's attitude toward Luffy should be preserved exactly as it is? Make sure to write your thoughts in the comments. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next video.